Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first ever Bo Bennett Show. With that being said, thank you to Joey behind the camera for getting all this production set up and the nice equipment, and hopefully this turns into something ginormous. And with that being said, I'd like to give a little history about myself. I come from a small town in Wisconsin. I grew up playing basketball and football and went to a powerhouse basketball school where I played alongside Giannis's younger brothers and played against several NBA players and honestly went to a powerhouse basketball high school, countless D1 players. And with that being said, I feel like I have a very good grip on sports, specifically basketball, not as much as football. And almost played football in college, but thank God that didn't work out. Ended up wandering down south to the greatest university on the planet, Ole Miss. Shout out to everybody, hotty toddy. With that being said, met some lifelong friends down there. And actually, my best friend to this day, Kyle, shout out Kyle, is a professional bodybuilder now. He has his first competition here in a month or two. So basically what I do now is I like weightlifting, obviously working, podcasting is the new gig I'm picking up now. Also would like to write a book in the future about my college experience because those of you who have known me throughout college know that I have some crazy stories, probably some for the good and some that are not going to be shared. But with that being said, I think it would definitely do well and give a good insight to people on how college is, where it's good, where it can improve, and just give people a different perspective. Obviously, coming from the north, going to school in the south, complete culture shock. First time in my life I was ever called a Yankee in my entire life. I thought that was only in movies, and it was phenomenal. I got bullied out of my accent, the majority of it. I still have some of it, especially when I go home. Definitely comes out. The northern accent comes out. So, went to Ole Miss, graduated with a degree in finance, and now live in the great state of Tennessee. And I'm starting this phenomenal podcast. So ideally, this will grow into where I'm interviewing other people. This first episode is just going to be a monologue with us together. How romantic. But long term, I'd like to interview. I have several friends, I think, that want to be on the podcast already. We're just getting the production and the equipment basically squared away. On the poll on my Instagram I put up the other day, you guys voted that you wanted to hear about crypto and finance the most. And then secondly, sports. So I'm going to go in the reverse order and save the best for last. Sports. Honestly, I feel like we have an American problem or an NBA and NFL problem. Not so much the NFL, but NBA problem. All of the big-time superstars are from overseas, which is fine. But the Americans usually always had the superstar with MJ and LeBron basically the last 15, 20 years. I mean, name all the greats. They're almost all Americans. And then you drizzle in a few overseas players. But now it's basically flipped where Luka, Giannis, everybody who's really big is from overseas. And now I think it's half or a third of all the first round picks are from overseas. And it's definitely going to impact the game because you're not only competing against Americans, what it kind of used to be is only Americans, and then a few overseas players who would come in and be fairly good, but not superstars. And now you're competing against the whole world because everybody can play basketball. It's much more accessible than it was 15, 20 years ago. The competition is getting so crazy. And I think the enthusiasm and grit, the game has changed obviously a ton. And a lot of people are, you can tell, just playing for paychecks or playing just for the clout. And there's not a lot of drive or passion. As you can tell, like the Nuggets losing by 40 in the playoffs never would have happened in the 80s. Maybe it was a rare occurrence, but nowadays it's like people are losing by 40 every other week or every other night. So in the NBA, I think the biggest problem we have is they have to find a way to incentivize players to play hard throughout the season. Because that's never used to be a problem until like load management became a thing. But MJ and LeBron usually are playing the majority of their games because that's just how they've always done it. MJ played like every game unless he was like basically he couldn't walk. So that's just the biggest issue with the NBA. The NFL, I think is fine. I think they have Mahomes as the face of the franchise basically. They have enough talent everywhere. The biggest thing will be I think they need to add 2 expansion teams. I think it'd be kind of fun to do that. Same with the NBA. I think they need some expansion teams just to get people rallied around something. So just my thoughts on sports. I haven't really kept up too much I don't keep up with baseball. Couldn't even probably name like 10 people in the MLB right now. UFC and golf. Love golf. Shout out Colin Morikawa, favorite golfer. Hideki Matsuyama, second favorite golfer. Those two, bang, bang. Love them. And for the UFC, I'm easily a McGregor fan. Current fighter, I think our up-and-coming fighter, even though he's already kind of made, would be Sean Strickland. I think he's just out of pocket about basically everything, and it's refreshing. Even if it's just stupid, whatever he's saying, he's just entertaining when he's on camera. Nonetheless, same with McGregor. I mean, you put a camera on him for 5 minutes and something good basically is going to come out of his mouth. So that's basically what I got with sports. Not a lot of like hot takes going on. If there's anything you want me to touch on in the future with podcasts with sports, if I'm doing another monologue, just let me know, or specific questions. I know the majority of you who are going to watch this probably have known me for years. And for all the new people who don't, I hope this is a good introduction. And moving forward with finance and crypto, which is the thing you guys wanted to know the most about. So the past 2 weeks actually, the ETH ETF and the Bitcoin ETF have both been approved. And on top of that, the Bitcoin halving just took place about a month and a half ago, somewhere around there. Let's just say within the past month. I don't have the exact date, but recently it just took place. So now for all those that don't understand, you basically have taken something that is capped at 21 million total. So it's already like scarce. Just think of it like gold, like scarce, and you cut it in half. So the supply has been cut in half. The demand has still increased, if not doubled or tripled, since the institutional investors are now able to trade it. So BlackRock, Vanguard, if you have been keeping up with what they've been trading, I believe it was today or yesterday, bought $250 million worth of Bitcoin, and then they're buying some meme coins like Shiba Inu today. They're buying, I think, like 10, 15 million worth of it. And now in London, there's an ETFP for Ethereum that allows them to also publicly trade it or have exposure to it. So now these institutions are coming along, and instead of being like the retail traders like you and I who sign up for Robinhood, click this stock, boom, swipe up, done, and you're basically in, these institutional investors who have hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillions of dollars. I believe BlackRock has 10 trillion assets under management right now, are now getting into the game. And they're obviously not putting their money there to lose. So for everybody who's like, well, what are you talking about? No clue what crypto is. Take 10 to 15 minutes out of your day and just watch a simple tutorial of what it is. And with that, it should start to piece together why this is important, why the future of finance is going to shift in this realm, and where it can go. So with that, if you wanted to get a part of it, go to Coinbase, sign up, create a wallet. Very simple. I'll give you a little 12-word seed phrase. Write that down, put it in a safe. Don't tell anybody about it. Super important. That's basically if you lose your phone's gone, and you don't have your electronic wallet, that is the only way to get it back. They don't keep records of it unless you back it up on iCloud, but that's a whole nother security issue. So your seed phrase, super important. Don't share it with anybody. It gives you access to whatever. Think of it like your social security for your wallet. That's all it is. So you don't give it to people. You got it in case shit hits the fan and you're ready to go. You go to Coinbase, you sign up, you make your wallet, deposit $200, $300, whatever you want to do. Go buy some Bitcoin. Go buy whatever you want. Altcoin season, I think, is almost here. This is not financial advice, so do not take this as financial advice. You're much better off following Roaring Kitty if you know what happened in the meme stock realm. That man created $6 billion worth of value over a tweet. So I'd go listen to his 2 cents if you had anything to do. He streams 3 times a week, so shout out Roaring Kitty. But I think if you want to get a part of it, now is definitely the time. You have to look at it, though, on a long time scale. So currently we're sitting at 67,000, 68,000-ish for Bitcoin at the creation of this video, we'll just say. 3,800 in ETH, and everything else is fluctuating a ton. ETH, I think, has jumped 20% the last week after this ETF came out of nowhere. And the date today is 5/24/2024. It is Memorial Day weekend, just so we can timestamp this and look back in the future about how crazy we thought we were about these price predictions and how much higher I think it will go. The reason the Bitcoin has so much potential as a store of value rather than Ethereum, which is a store basically, or a platform. It's a better way to think of it as a platform. So Bitcoin is based as a commodity. Think of it similar to electronic gold, which people for some reason can't understand. It's a very simple thing. There's a capped limit. It's like, why do people want to buy Gucci? Why do people want to buy Louis? Why do people want to buy one of 30 watch collections, right? There's only 30 in the world. You got one of them. It's scarcity and exclusivity. The same as with Bitcoin. There's only so much Bitcoin in the world ever. That's how it's programmed. There's not going to be more. There's not going to be less. It's programmed at 21 million. If you had it, you lost it, it's gone. Like, you can't get it back. This ties back into the seed phrase and why it is so important for all of you. If you do get a wallet, move the money on the wallet. You need to be able to write that seed phrase down, keep it somewhere, and you're safe. Don't just think it's whatever, because if you lose that seed phrase and you can't get into your wallet, nobody can help you. Coinbase can't help you. Nobody can help you with it. Your money's gone. So that's where I think now that all these regulatory United States, at least securities, are starting to get into it and label all the alts as securities. We'll get into that in just 1 second, but all the alts are going to be labeled as securities. ETH and Bitcoin are labeled as commodities, which means moving forward, I believe they'll have to label Polkadot, XRP, and I'm blanking on one right now, BNB. All of those will have to be labeled as commodities, given that they aren't securities. The difference between securities and commodities in the simple terms is basically most commodities are like properties or like hard assets like gold. Think of it like that. Securities is something where I give you money and you believe that I give you money, you run a company, I believe you're going to make me money in the long term and I get my money back. Think of stocks. Those are all security exchanges, SEC. That's what that all is. You give money to something in a business hoping that it creates more profit and that you can get a return on it. But now that they're labeling it as commodities, honestly, I don't understand all the legal ramifications behind it, but it is very interesting that they would choose a currency to be a commodity. And maybe this is going to be the new way we look at finance, just given that we've always been able to print and cover our debt in the U.S., given that we're like the kingpin basically of the world when it comes to finance, and we'll still be the trailblazer of the world. If you look at where we stand, obviously the debt's a huge problem, but I think the biggest win on this long-winded speech in the past month is that they voted in the House to ban CBDCs, and that's central banking digital currencies. Why is that a big deal? A lot of you probably are wondering. There's a big fear that if you look at China right now, they have a cashless society, completely cashless, where basically you can walk into a business, try to pay with cash, and they're like, we don't take this anymore. It's not a legal form of tender. Like, you can't pay with this money. You have to do it electronically, which for most people, we'd all agree is not a big deal. Just first glance, it's like, whatever. We all use Apple Pay, click, done, boom. But it gives people the ability and the government the ability. Let's say you were speeding, didn't pay a speeding ticket. You went to buy something in a cashless society and they froze all your assets until you paid that speeding ticket. If everything is digitized, the government has complete control over all of your assets that are linked. Even now they do, but with cash, it still balances back out. Like with cash, you still have a hard form of money where I can hand this in, get something back in return. Moving forward, it'll be interesting to see how Bitcoin and the dollar, I won't say merge, but how they correlate with one another. Because I think the dollar needs to get back on track and tied to hard assets like gold, silver, precious metals. But honestly, I think it needs to get tied to gold and Bitcoin, a basically combination of the two. The printing of the money's gone much too far. Everybody in my generation understands that inflation has basically doubled everything that's fast food at the grocery store. Gasoline prices are extremely high, and we're using reserves to cover it rather than just admit we were wrong. And despite where you stand on the aisle, left or right, I think we all take a step back and look at this logically. Everybody can kind of realize we're not going in the greatest direction as a financial perspective. We're doing a horrendous job. And on top of that, other countries have taken this opportunity to start forming different currencies like the BRICS currency, which has come out. And now that the Chinese and the Russians are not using the US dollar for more than, I think, 20% of their trades between each other, I think they're almost all exclusively doing it in the not the yen. I'm blanking on the right name. Okay, we're back. Joey and I had to look up what the Chinese currency was. We don't know how to pronounce it. So moving forward, as we said, technical difficulties. First podcast. Bear with us, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for being along the ride if you're still with us. But basically all of Russia and China are now doing trade outside of the US dollar. Same with some of the Middle Eastern countries and the big oil sheiks. Definitely want to get away from the dollar so they can have more power, although they already control basically the majority of the oil. And with that, that's just my little touch on politics. Circling back to finance and crypto, as you can see, we're not moving in the greatest direction. We definitely need to get back on track. Interest rates are going to stay above 5% for the entire year until at least the election. There's a mathematical equation that in order to pay off your debt, you have to keep it above 5%. 5% is basically, think of like running on a treadmill or treading water more so. You're like right at even. And I believe we're right now at 5.25 or 5.5. and it has to stay above that in order to reduce inflation. If you looked at Jerome Powell and what he recently just said is that the assets we have already inflated enough where we aren't really worried about it. The assets have already gone up. The stock market's still doing well, even though the system is basically flooded, given that 25% of all US dollars have been printed since 2020, which basically correlates to the purchasing power of the US dollar has been cut by 25%. So if you made 100 grand in 2020, you're basically at the equivalent of $75,000 for purchasing power. That's basically how it works. And if you think about this logically, how much inflation has really affected everyday Americans. Like if you go to the grocery store and you really look at comparing prices 4 years ago to four years today, it's astounding how much it has gone up. And we are not doing a great job. But the good thing is all we got to do is just go back and fix our mistakes. It's not like we got to recreate the wheel. The good thing is we could still pivot, go back, make a lot of moves happen. And I think we're not as far off as we think we are. And as long as everybody's back on the same page, I think we can really get this country back in the right direction. So with that being said, back to crypto and finance. The biggest thing you need to understand is you should be controlling your own wallet and your own assets, which is the biggest reason I believe all of you watching this should get your own wallet, learn seed phrase, learn what blockchain is. Blockchain, the simplest way to think about it is there's different banks you go to with different accounts. And if you want to put money in that bank, you need to have that bank account. That's the simplest way to think about it. It's basically chains that have all the data stored on different chains. And after you do that and you have a wallet, you can switch which chain you're on and move forward and do all this other jazz. We'll get into more details later. So circling back, if you want to learn more about this, you should just Google a quick YouTube video. There's probably a 5 to 10 minute video. If you guys want me to go more in depth about crypto and the super specifics of where I think it'll move in the future, I can definitely do that. But the high look, the sky and the high, basically overview is Bitcoin's definitely going to go up. I think it hits 100K at least this bull cycle in this bull run in this next cycle in the next 18 months at most, we'll say. So by 2026, it should be to 100,000. And with that being said, this is concluding the first ever The Bo Bennett Show. Thank you for all those who tuned in and who are still with us. Thank you. All glory to God. Shout out to Jesus. Hit that like and subscribe button. Love all of you and hope you have a phenomenal day.